A strike that threatens to raise the cost of just about everything is now into its fifth day. Thousands of BC port workers are off the job, and negotiations between their union and employer remain deadlocked. With cargo stuck and piling up, the Chamber of Commerce estimates the strike could cost the economy $5.5 billion every week. That has many business leaders and politicians calling on the federal government to act.
It is an essential service, and it is massively disruptive to our economy and the economy of Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan has also weighed in as well. So there will be some conversations over the coming days, but this can't drag on for weeks or months. We need a resolution. We'd love to see both sides get to the table, come to a common ground, but we understand that they're not moving closer together, and that requires federal intervention.
Okay, the minister who would have the job of tabling back-to-work legislation is here. Seamus O'Regan is the Federal Minister of Labour. Minister, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, David.
A lot at stake in these negotiations, but things appear to have stalled. What's the latest you're hearing on the status of these talks?
Our mediators continue to talk to both parties. So, things are, nobody's walking away, nobody's run away. The mediators continue to do their job. They're some of the finest public servants I've ever worked with a track record of 93% of disputes happening without a work stoppage. I mean, WestJet, for instance, even on May long weekend, didn't happen, and that's because these guys are very good at what they do. I came out here on Saturday as soon as there was strike action from St. John's, and I flew here to support them in what they do. To be very clear, David, I mean, this is a dispute between two private actors. You've got the longshoremen, the ILWU, and then you've got on the other side the BC MEA, which is the port operators for 32 ports up and down the west coast here.
Right.
But I am here, to speak on behalf of all Canadians too. We need a deal.
Okay, but where are you on that
today?
Minister? But just like I know your mediators are still talking, but is there any progress being made? Because it's day 5 now.
There is progress being made, but we need a deal. And that's why I'm here on the show. I don't generally do a lot of shows or talking publicly, because I want everybody, as I keep tweeting out, I want everybody concentrating on the table, concentrating on a deal. But it's reached a point where I need to make sure that Canadians understand that we know what is at stake. This is, a third of the trade of the entire country. I have been talking to union heads and business leaders and ministers of jobs, for instance, in Alberta, Minister of Labour here in BC, who I'm just speaking with here in the BC government offices. They have imparted upon me what is at stake. It is a lot. It is the supply chains of this country. It is, it is inflation. It is the costs to working people right across this country. So, I am here once again to say publicly what I have been imparting on both sides privately. Get a deal. Canadians need a deal.
Okay, but in the absence of that deal, Minister, we've heard from the Auto Manufacturers Association, the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. They are talking about the ripple effect of this, the just-in-time parts delivery, for example, for the auto plants. There is a frustration there and already some calls for back-to-work legislation. So I know you say focus on the bargaining table, but I mean, what is the tipping point for this if it's day 5 and you feel the need to start urging publicly for talks to start moving? And what's the tipping point for back-to-work legislation?
Look, the most resilient deals are made at the table. This isn't just a matter of, the fact that I do believe in the collective bargaining process and this government believes in the collective bargaining process. It's also because the best deals are made at the table for both parties, almost inevitably, because they have control over the deal that they reached. But also because, when deals are imposed upon workplaces, it can poison a workplace for, a generation. The best deals, the most resilient deals, so that you don't have to come back to this position all the time, the best deals are made at the table. So it feels like forever. And, every day that goes by, trust me, I get it, and I'm hearing it from people right across this country. But we need that deal struck at the table. That's what I'm here to support both parties to do. It is their deal to strike. But speaking on behalf of Canadians from coast to coast, we need that deal. It is too important for the economy of this country. And that's what I'm here to do, is to keep that pressure on.
Right, but is back-to-work legislation completely off the table? Because you go back to 2021, and I know you weren't Minister of Labour at the time, but it was your government, and you did back-to-work legislation with the Port of Montreal. So what's the difference here?
2.5 years of negotiation at the Port of Montreal, and in the last 8 months, as the minister of the day, Minister Tassi said, there wasn't a deal to be had. I mean, there was nothing in sight. This would have gone on and on and on. Remember, too, 2021 was in the middle of COVID. We were relying on medical supplies coming into Montreal. But the bottom line is that it had gone on for 2.5 years, and for 8 months, they didn't talk to one another. They weren't talking. So, you know, we felt we had no choice in that situation. Here, the timeline is extremely different, but the pressure is nonetheless very real. We are talking about things that leave this country to go to markets abroad. We're talking about things from markets abroad that get into this country. Roughly a third of our trade through these ports out in British Columbia alone. Alberta feels it. Ontario is increasingly feeling it. The rest of the country will feel it. I don't want it to get to that. And we've got competitive pressures too. Look, I get it from, I get it from both sides. I mean, I keep saying to people these days, their nerves are rubbed raw. There's just so much going on in the world. Workers feel that. And they want consistency and they want stability to know that they have a job, that they have a good job, and that they're paid well for the job and the good work that they do. You have employers as well, that are looking at supply chains and links across the country and, fractions and frictions that are occurring, war out in Europe. I mean, these all have an effect too on employers. I get it from both sides, and maintaining a level of empathy with both sides is really important in my job in getting a deal done for Canadians. And that is what I am here to do, to put that pressure on both sides and to say to them, Canadians need a deal.
Right, and I appreciate the Minister of Labour flat out saying we're prepared to use back-to-work legislation will change the tenor of the negotiations and change the tenor of the talks. But if you listen to the business community and their concerns about the reputational impact this has on Canada as a reliable partner, and you look at the practical knock-on effects of manufacturing plants that need parts that they can't get because of the ports and seafood and other things that are trapped there, I mean, are you saying back-to-work legislation is not an option at all in this dispute, or just not an option right now as we're talking?
It's not something I'm looking at. I'm not looking any further than table right now. I firmly believe that both sides can reach an agreement at this table. And I'm determined to do that because they are the most resilient deals. Because they are the deals that ultimately are best for both sides, because they have control over the outcome, and because they are more permanent and longer lasting. They lead to better deals in the future. When you impose a deal on both sides, you poison a workplace sometimes. Not always, but sometimes. And I'm not willing to take that chance readily. So what I want is a deal at the table.